Waukesha Water Service Area.
I have a motion to offer. It is the motion which I presented in a written communication to Clerk Treasurer Salentine last Wednesday, a week ago, January 16th. And I will read it into the record. You've got copies of it, and it was posted on the website. And it is as follows. Regarding the Waukesha Water Service Area, as defined by the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, Sewer PAC, and as incorporated into the pending application that the City of Waukesha submitted to the State of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources in conjunction with their efforts to obtain water from Lake Michigan, I move as follows. Number 1, to accept the conditions outlined by the City of Waukesha in the letter to the Town of Waukesha dated October 16th, 2012 and November 8th, 2012, both of which were issued in response to the letter that the Town of Waukesha, from the Town of Waukesha to the City of Waukesha dated September 18th, 2012. And number 2, to include in the Waukesha Water Service Area all of the lands presently located in the Town of Waukesha which are contained in the following areas as depicted on the attached map, which is referenced to Exhibit A. And those are areas numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And item number 3 is to direct the town attorney to prepare the necessary documentation to memorialize the, quote, agreement, unquote, between the Town of Waukesha and the City of Waukesha. And number 4 is to direct the town attorney to prepare a formal resolution for adoption by this town board that comports with this motion in all respects, and I so move.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion fails. All right, let's move on to discuss this item thoroughly before a decision can be made. In your packets, you'll see that there is a number of documents, and the documents provide a history, a recent history of our communication with Waukesha Water Utility, the City of Waukesha. It has been an arduous process to determine the facts of the facts that needed to be considered in order to consider inclusion or exclusion from the water service area. Because this is the first time that there's been an application such as this that's testing the state statutes that were adopted for this purpose. And as with many legal issues, there are interpretations. And over the last 2 years that we have taken the time to thoroughly understand and allow some of these questions to be vetted with the different communities that were involved, namely Milwaukee, Oak Creek, Racine, who were considered as suppliers. A lot of questions were able to be answered for us. So it was good that we did not go into an immediate decision process as some other communities have done. In this case, we've determined that if we say no, that our borders will essentially be sealed, which means that we would preserve the land mass that we have today, and annexation would no longer be feasible. That's an exciting distinction that was not in place when we first started these discussions a year ago. And that has come through discussions with the DNR, through work with our consultant, Bruce Baker, with requests for clarification of information, with requests for clarifications of inconsistencies in the law, or differences in the law where we needed to have clarification. And we have provided that information in our discussions with the city and had hoped, given that if we were to say no because our borders would be sealed, and the reason that most of us were elected up here was to preserve our tax base and to preserve our borders and to preserve our water, that they would work with us on an annexation basis so that if there were a property that it made sense to have some joint development, that we'd be able to move forward on that basis. That wasn't possible. We tried very hard, but unfortunately the city has taken a very firm position, and we weren't able to move past that. As I looked at Mr. Fischer's motion, he indicates in the first section that we should accept the conditions outlined by the City of Waukesha in the letters to the Town of Waukesha dated October 16th and November 8th. Since they contradict each other, I'm not sure that's a good idea, because they don't have the same terms and conditions, and there's some very specific items that have been removed from the letter that we requested. One of those was that the City of Waukesha shall not construct or operate any high-capacity wells in the Town of Waukesha, and the city shall not construct or operate any new high-capacity wells in the City of Waukesha. That was in their original October 16th letter. It was removed in their November 8th letter, and in their November 8th letter, they indicated that their October 16th letter was null and void. The other option that we requested that they took out was the Vernon Marsh. We had asked for the City of Waukesha to either donate that land to the DNR, because again, they weren't going to be drilling any high-capacity wells. They had indicated that they weren't interested in their initial letter to do that, but they would, let me quote, "The City of Waukesha is in agreement that it will preserve the Lathers Farm for public use through the Vernon Marsh Refuge Area, thereby preserving its surface water and recreational resources to the extent it deems possible. However, the city will not agree to donate the land to the DNR." The important part is that they were going to maintain it and not put any high-capacity wells. Those two options are no longer in their November 8th letter. I find that very troubling, especially given the fact that their Plan B is as designated on the map to the left, and I'm going to provide some information. Hopefully some of you can see where we are here. This is Lonsdale Road. These are 28 wells that are designated throughout the town and village of Big Bend, but mainly in the town of Waukesha. If the City of Waukesha is not successful with their Lake Michigan application, this is Plan B. Plan B will devastate the waterways, the Vernon Marsh, water surface areas, potentially devastate our private wells, impact with our septic systems. It is not an option that we could consider having them do. Having high-capacity wells in our community is not appropriate. Those of us that have read the application, and it's quite extensive, and it's online at the City of Waukesha if you'd like to read it. There is devastation that would take place if these wells were put in place. That is their base case for why they want Lake Michigan water, because of the damage that this would do. And so this is a very significant and serious issue for us. Not having high-capacity wells additionally drilled in the town of Waukesha is critical for our existence. Because as we originally identified in February of 2010, if the wells, the extent to which they're talking about having to do it to support their growth, we would be devastated. The fact that they've taken out the option for eliminating the high-capacity wells in their November 8th letter, therefore, is very troubling. The fact that they have taken out that they will no longer preserve the Lathers property in their letter is therefore very troubling. They've not given any explanation. There was a request made through Administrator Henschel to have further discussion, and that was rebuffed. This is their final offer. So I think the town of Waukesha has gone out of its way to understand the implications and the ramifications of what they're asking us. I think we've done our homework over the last 2 years. There's been no roadmap for us to do so. It's simply been hard work and reading and the ability to understand, well, this is the book. It seems pretty minimal, but then there's a CD in the back with hundreds and hundreds of pages. These are where some of these maps are taken from to understand exactly what the impact to our community is. Keep in mind that we were never asked about being in the water service area. That was simply done for us. And then we were told that this was a benefit to us because we could have a benefit of Lake Michigan water. We don't need Lake Michigan water. If there's enough water to serve the entire city of Waukesha through the application of that many wells, then there is certainly enough water for us to survive as Town of Waukesha residents using our private wells. If no one is coming in and drawing those kinds of numbers from our aquifer, we have plenty of water if there's enough water for them to use it as Plan B to support their entire community and their growing community. The initial water service area matched exactly the City of Waukesha's land use plan for 2035. Their growth plan matched it exactly. So if people don't think that the City of Waukesha has its plans to expand, they're wrong. They've demonstrated it. They just took another 90 acres north of Highway 59. The DOA, the Department of Administration, who reviews all annexations, had indicated that that was not in the public interest, and it sent a letter such. The Plan Commission and the Common Council of the City of Waukesha chose to override and ignore the DOA's recommendation and approve that land anyway. So I don't see that the City of Waukesha is in any way limiting their reach. Given the fact that if we say no, the borders are sealed as the information that we have today, I think they could have worked with us to some degree and perhaps provided additional information here to give us some comfort as to their future plans. I don't see how we are comfortable including the entire town of Waukesha, knowing that they're not guaranteeing that they will put no high-capacity wells in our community. They had talked at one time about needing the Lathers property anyway, even if they get Lake Michigan water, for a redundant water supply. With that redundant water supply, directly in the Vernon Marsh area, the amount of damage that can be done there is substantial. And we just as taxpayers spent $1 million, I believe it was, to acquire the land in the Vernon Marsh to expand that area. But yet these 5 well fields that are specifically designated for that area, which by the way, the City of Waukesha has purchased that land, is giving all indications that they do still intend to put high capacity wells in the town of Waukesha. So we have a significant issue. We have to figure out how best to navigate the course. It is in our best interest that the City of Waukesha's application for Lake Michigan water is successful. And to have a large land mass that is potentially to be viewed as growth area that does not enhance the City of Waukesha's application. In fact, the environmentalists and the groups that oppose the compact's consideration of this are very concerned about the amount of land, because looking at a map, it looks as though the city or the town of Waukesha is obviously a significant piece, as you can see on that map. And growth is not supposed to be part of an application for Lake Michigan water. It is supposed to be for people who need water, have no other source of water. The City of Waukesha has a significant problem. They need water. They just shouldn't need our water. And Lake Michigan is a good option for them. The question is it a good option for us? And I believe, given the circumstances, given the removal of certain items on this November 8th document from the city, that we need to do a tailored approach to this particular situation. There are about 150 customers of the City of Waukesha utility services that are town of Waukesha residents through various reasons, many of which are the fly ash site that's up on Arcadian that's causing damage to people's wells. It's a health and safety issue, and water has been extended to those people without the requirement for annexation. So I would suggest that we discuss a proactive approach to this issue. that we include certain areas of the town that need this water potentially, where the infrastructure is already there, where there are people that are already being serviced, and not include the majority of the town of Waukesha that without artificial removal of its water by another municipality would have, in my opinion, and in the opinion that we've been provided by Professor Chirkar, significant and sufficient water to exist.
As we've talked in closed session before, we understand that there is a list of residents that have services. Being included in the water service area is just a yes or no. It's not really an option for the board. We'd be abandoning people on this list that already receive services. The question becomes, really, what do we include? Do we include the whole town? Do we include part of it? If we include part of it, how much of that part? What about the guy who's getting services because his well is currently contaminated, and the neighbor next door whose well currently isn't contaminated but might get contaminated in the future? What do? We leave the guy on the east side of the street in and the guy on the west side out? As we had worked through this issue in closed session, we identified the people on these lists and came to a consensus of their location. I took it upon myself to call Eric Ebersberger from the DNR today and asked him if we were to include a partial area of the town, how would the DNR want to see that? And they alluded to the fact that they would want to see, in some capacity, a legal description so that Sewer PAC could accurately redraw the map. We were not going to just accept their map in mass. My motion would be that we do accept the final offer that the City of Waukesha has made and insert into the water service area the areas that we identified in closed session, whether we want to draw them and circle them on the map tonight, which I think is fair to the audience to actually identify those locations. I wouldn't necessarily draw those on the map unless we get some type of a consensus, because we've got 14 different colors on the map like we did last time. But that we do so, and using some of Mr. Fischer's language within his written motion, which I do find some of it acceptable, directing the attorney to draft a memorialization record of this agreement, authorizing the town chair to execute that agreement would be part of my motion. Given the time constraints that we have, is it reasonable to really be calling another meeting and dragging you folks back in just to watch us sign the form? So I would move that the board come to a consensus tonight on those areas and authorize the chair and the attorney to draft the agreement accepting the City of Waukesha's final offer to us, which contains some benefits to the town, and it's the best agreement we're going to get. And again, I say that because we can't leave these folks just behind, and we can't leave their immediate neighbors behind. So we have to enter the service area at some capacity, and I think this is the point that I'm going to make. So that's my motion, and we can go from there.
Is there a second to the motion? I'll second for discussion.
I would ask, and certainly go ahead and identify areas, but I indicated this to Clerk Salentine several times in the past week in conversation. I would ask that any motion be put in the form of writing and actually passed out before we vote on it tonight. I mean, proceed, but that is part of one of our ordinances that's probably been in there for 30 years that I think is a darn good one. We need to have clarity on what it is somebody's asking us to vote on. So that's not only my request, that's our ordinance.
Well, we can certainly vote to have certain items included in a resolution and make the motion very clear. It will take the attorney some time to do the formal resolution. That's not something that we can produce here this evening, but we can certainly provide enough information, and we have a digital recording so that we will memorialize whatever the decision is. I'd like to do you have something that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I want the motion in writing, not the resolution, the motion in writing. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Fair request. Jamie, if you want me to read,
I didn't talk about the motion, I talked about the resolution. So go ahead and read your motion, please.
I didn't talk about resolution, I talked about motion.
I wanted to clarify, but thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Jamie, it would be to accept the conditions outlined by the City of Waukesha's final letter dated, Angie, can you verify that letter is dated?
November 8th, 2012.
Okay. And to insert into the water service area the following locations as defined by the map attached. And I believe for tonight's purposes, we need to get Big Chief marker out and circle the darn things and ask our town engineer or planner to create a legal description or go to a title company, because it sounded like that's what the DNR is going to ask us to provide them. And back to my motion, and to further direct the town attorney to prepare the necessary documentation to memorialize the agreement surrounding the town of Waukesha's inclusion in the water service area, limited inclusion in the water service area, and to authorize the execution of that form by town chairperson.
The water service area,
Limited water service area.
limited inclusion to the water service area.
And to authorize the town chairperson to sign that.
You gonna read that back again? You have your motion ready, Mr. Fisher?
Nope.
Oh, you gotta remember.
Oh, is it right up there? Scared.
May I just make a real quick comment
Well,
while she's typing that?
Well, can you give her a minute, just quiet, so that she can get it in there?
Oh.
Just give her a moment, please.
Got it.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Fisher.
I'd just like to make one quick comment, Supervisor Vansky, and maybe I misunderstood what you said. It's kind of directed to the audience. Have there been closed session discussions about negotiations with the City of Waukesha on this issue? To be sure, but to suggest the town board discussed and decided this issue in closed session, I reject that characterization completely. I mean, for any of you sitting in the audience, if you think when we're in closed session we're all well-behaved and have a virtual love fest, then you've got an incredible sense of imagination. Those closed session meetings have been probably much like some of these open sessions here, which aren't exactly a thing to be proud of. We do have many differences of opinion. We did not come to a consensus on what this decision should be in a closed session meeting, and I emphasize that strongly, at least I didn't.
And Brian, I thank you for clarifying that. If anybody took that, I will tell you that there was actually not a consensus of the water service area. I think there is something that we could come to agreement with, but everybody has their own vision of what this might look like. And today's the day, I think, to get out our crayons and draw the map.
I mean, just in fairness to it, on important issues, and I'm not trying to one-up other people here, but these are things that need to be discussed and resolved in public, in rich, sometimes perhaps
contentious discussion or debate, but these things are things for public discussion, not private resolution.
Mr. Fischer, I don't know what your characterization is, but your motion to make a decision on this prior to discussion is completely against the statement that you just made. Or the
Oh, it,
group,
on the contrary, it is not. Motions are to be made and then discussed. That's the way the system works.
your system was to
Let's-
subvert.
Let's stay on.
Thank you. The people that are currently in the service area, and everybody here is, I think you're well aware of where that is, correct? Can I have my back to you for a moment? Because I think the people who are here want to know why we're making the decisions that hopefully we can make this evening. The people in green are sewer only outside of the city limits. Okay? People in blue have water outside of the city limits. So you can see there's a big grouping around Sunset because there was agreement in the 80s between people that got along with Mr. Brockus and Mr. Brunner. No, yes, Mr. Brockus. Senior Mr. Brockus. And Mr. Brunner, we made an agreement on the expansion of Sunset Road. And as part of that agreement at the time with the City of Waukesha, they agreed to extend services, city water and sewer services, to town of Waukesha residents without annexation. So there was precedent between the two communities working together. That was in the 80s. Since then, the town of Waukesha and the city of Waukesha have not worked together. But because there was precedent, we worked for almost 2 years to try to find common ground and find a reason to come back to that kind of cooperation because it made sense in many regards. And we still would like to cooperate with the city on other issues. We think there's lots of reasons that we should have given how we're configured. So the question is, everything in pink is still the town of Waukesha. So each pink area is an island, in some cases, within the city. The city is in gray, the town is in pink, other than the green and yellow. Those people have both services that are located, outside of this area. So this is outside, that's in the city of Pewaukee, I believe. So those are the areas that we're considering. And so when people talk about the island areas, they're talking about these areas here. This is Arcadian, this is the 288 acres, basically, that the town of Brookfield is interested in. Okay, Morningside subdivision, and it goes from there. I created a map based on my thought process, I guess, on this over the last several years. And hopefully people can see that. It basically incorporates those areas that are north of 59, that are east of TT, but does include the area of the molybdenum, I believe is the word, from the fly ash site up by Greenfield. Very significant issue. City of Waukesha has significant infrastructure already in place there, in many cases because of the need to serve those members who have well water that is contaminated. That plume could expand, and so it's important for those folks to have access to clean water. And so I would fully support that area having that support of water.
I would accept as my motion, and the chair, or the clerk is going to print out my motion, that map be the map inserted as part of my motion. So there's a complete first motion on the floor.
And I pass the map to everybody so they can be sure to, since this is first pass of this, I certainly want you to understand what I included and excluded.
I have a question with regards to the map. I understand obviously we're not working with engineering precision here, but is it your intent to perhaps bisect parcels with your delineation, or is it your intent
Why don't you bring it around?
to include whatever parcels are within the delineated area?
It would be these enclosed, encircled areas. that I would include everything that is outside of the completely encircled location, meaning all of this here would not be in the water service area. We could number them.
Is this included or excluded?
Yes, because it's completely.
That was two questions. Included or
It's
excluded?
included, because it's
Okay.
completely
Then put an
encircled.
eye on it.
And I think that might be the best thing to do. We could use your numbers if you want.
Okay. Oh my God.
Always fun numbers.
Would it make sense to take a 5-minute break while you number the map? Let everybody take a bathroom break and a water break, and then we'll reconvene at 8:30, let's say, okay?